council members. Eileen.
I'm here.
Damien, I don't believe has joined. Charles.
I'm here.
Peg.
I'm here.
Jackie hasn't joined yet. Carol.
Here.
Wendy's excused, and Mark.
Here.
Great. DOI folks, you want to introduce yourselves?
Bobby Baca, Consumer Services, PNC.
Matt Mortier, DOI Consumer Services, Life and Health.
Awesome. And do we have any members of the public present? I don't see anyone, but I think I'm missing something. Great. We are going to move on to approval of the minutes. I know we were waiting on some things from the commissioner, so didn't get everything out until just yesterday. So I don't know if everybody got a chance to look through minutes and watch if you wanted to. Carol?
I actually did the minutes, and what was intended to be attached was the updated document, and much of the minutes are in the document, and they weren't attached.
What document?
The one I'm holding, we call it the Consumer Insurance Council recommendations. It has the disposition and any comments that we made in the meeting about the, so I sent that in with the draft minutes, January.
Okay.
So
And I had,
things
Bobby,
are,
do you have
things
that?
are not indicated in the minutes if they're indicated on here.
Right, but they're in the video that was recorded.
Yeah, I think I apologize. I think I do have that saved, that document saved. I think I failed to send it with all the other attachments. So I will go ahead and send it now to everyone.
Awesome, thank you, Bobby. Did everybody get a chance to look at the video? I think as far as minutes go these days with recorded videos, it's a little easier because there's not a lot of dispute around whether or not it's correct since it's recorded. So as far as the recorded video for minutes goes, could we get a motion to move on approval of that so we can get it posted?
Well, I mean, we got it yesterday, so I haven't listened to it. I'm sure it's accurate. I'm just a little concerned that this is our official record, and I don't know where it exists.
Bobby's emailing it out to everybody right now.
Okay.
I just sent it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, do we have a quorum? Do we need a quorum? Are we sufficiently constituted to conduct business today? Sorry.
We will find out if we have a quorum when we get to the operating principles and decide what we want a quorum to mean for us.
Oh, of course. Thank you, Anaya.
So, I mean, we have a majority right now. So
Great.
I would
Thank
say
you.
that we are okay to move forward. Unless in the operating principles, we decide that a quorum means something different than majority.
Thank you. Therefore, I will make a motion that we approve the minutes as constituted by the video and documented in the summary, and with the list of recommendation document that we're waiting for Bobby to send, which I do already have.
Great. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Everyone in favor?
Approved, yes.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I approved the written ones. I didn't have a chance to watch a video, but I had read through the written ones earlier, so I don't know if that counts.
Yeah. Do we have any concern with the video recording not being accurate for any reason. Anyone opposed to approving both the written document and the video to get posted?
No.
Oh,
Great. Bobby, we can go ahead and post minutes as they've been approved.
I will get those forwarded to our web person and get them posted.
Can I ask a question, Anaya?
Yeah.
The reason this is of importance to me is because I don't know where the commissioner's recommendations reside. And I understood they were going to reside within this. And I don't know at what point in time we add them to this record.
We can add them in when we get them, if that's what we want. We have them currently as separate documents that Bobby sent out yesterday. But if there's a desire from the council to keep it all in one place, I'm happy to put them in to that document when we receive them.
So Anaya, what you're saying is that what Bobby sent out yesterday was the commissioner's response to the various recommendations that are in progress, and those are independent documents.
Yes.
And I'm proposing that they not be independent. And we had earlier ones than the ones from yesterday as well.
Right. So
Earlier.
I can get the current ones and any previous ones from Bobby, and I can add them into that document if that's
Okay.
what the council wants.
I would consider that the official minutes.
So the minutes currently are the recorded videos.
Exactly. They're not the minutes. They're the progress of the work the council has done, but not the minutes of the meetings.
I just want the public to be able to read the recommendations.
Correct. That's the work
Absolutely.
that we've done. So yes,
Yeah.
they're not the minutes.
And I'll interject that the recommendations are on the division's website. There is a specific tab for the recommendations and the commissioner's responses. And so those can be found on the website by any person from the public.
Great. And Carol, for tracking purposes for us, if you want me to put the responses from the commissioner into that document so you have it all in one place, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, because for example, we have a numbering system here, and this has dropped the numbering system. The commissioner's responses.
I'll get it all on one document.
We know what we did with everything. Yeah.
For sure. Well, Bobby, if you could just email me any past responses that we've received from the commissioner, aside from the ones you sent yesterday, I can get those all added into that tracking document for the council.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, moving right along, I'm going to share my screen so we can work through the operating principles and hopefully get them to a point where we can approve them and get them on the website. So I'm going to scroll down. Can everybody see my screen? I can't see any of you anymore.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Great. I'm going to scroll down, unless we want to go back through this top part. I'm going to scroll down to where we left off.
Carol, you have to talk because Anaya can't see you.
Yes. I have a question.
Yeah.
You know, we have gone over this business of how we're going to document geographic and demographic diversity of the state. And one of the senators in a recent hearing on 175 said, how can you document that if it's not in the application? And I've been asking this for 3 years. So I have proposed and I've asked multiple times for us to use a different application that uses the vetted criteria on the state commission's website, and I've not had any response back on that request. But when the senator brought it up in relation to a new bill that Dora would be hosting in the same fashion, and when he said, how can you do it if you don't ask the question? I say the same thing, is You know, we were asked to document our diversity to the Sunset Committee, and we're desperate to try to do so and had a lot of inaccurate information. So my recommendation to this is that you identify how you're going to document this geographic and demographic diversity, such as identified in the candidate application.
So the application does include geographic, but we can look at potentially amending the application to include other identities as well if we want to look at not just geographic diversity in the applications so that we have that data. We cannot require that people share that.
So I'm only suggesting that we use the state vetted application, and it asks for congressional district and so forth and so on. In the prior statute, it was a matter of representing 7 congressional districts. That is not the case this time around, but we do have to identify, and the legislators specifically asked for that in the hearings, is what is your composition, you know, by legislative district and so forth. So I'm just saying that this say comma as identified in the application, then we can change the application.
So Bobby, could we get clarification? Is the application something that the council has purview over, or is that the commissioner?
I think the council can make recommendations, but ultimately it's the commissioner who is going to review and approve any of those applications.
Great. So Carol, would it feel okay for you that once we get down to the recommendations part of the agenda today, we can put together a new recommendation to the commissioner around what we want that application to look like?
Well, it's going to take some work to develop a new application, but.
Well, I mean, we don't need to develop the application. We just need to create a recommendation stating what we want reflected in the application.
Well, Anaya, I've stated my position, you know, and the
right,
senator.
But it's never been a formal recommendation to the commissioner, and that's what we would need to do.
Okay, I don't think we're capable of doing that today without looking at that application, but.
Okay. Well, when we get to recommendations, we can talk through that then. But I want to get through the operating principles first. And I don't think we need to change anything in the operating principles as far as the application goes, but if we want the application to look different than it does, we need to make a recommendation.
Okay, so for first thing, I'm proposing the language say, as identified in the application.
So we're looking at the bullet that says, to the greatest extent possible, the council must reflect the geographic and demographic diversity of the state. Anaya, I do have the application pulled up. I can present it now if you'd like me to, or again, we can wait until we talk about recommendations later.
Yeah, let's wait until we talk about recommendations, but Carol, can you share that language you wanted included again?
I'm sorry, the link?
The language.
Oh, well, I would say as identified in the candidate application.
Does that work for everybody?
Because basically, honestly, if you want to know the truth, people have been looking at last names, first names, color of skin, and that's highly inappropriate.
I agree. I also think there's a lot more to diversity.
Yeah, the state has a very nice vetted application.
So this is Mark Wen. So Bobby, what does the state mean by define geographic and demographic diversity of the state? Define that, Bobby.
I don't know that I can define it. I mean, it would be, I mean, we want the entire state represented if at all possible. So if we can get applicants from the Western Slope, from Southern Colorado, from Northern Colorado, that to me is a geographic representation.
All right, so what's
We have to remember, we
what's the
also have to remember
demographic
that,
mean? What's that
Huh?
mean? That's what I want to know. What geographic is obvious, okay? You know,
right?
longitude and latitude. What does demographic diversity mean?
So
Tell
very,
me.
very peculiarly, again, there's a lot of bills in the legislature this year which copy the language, and very peculiarly, they say wealth and income. Demographics are known to include education, and obviously you would tend to think of gender and ethnicity, and that again is reflected in different kinds of ways, but you've nailed it, Mark, in that this varies in each piece of legislation that is introduced.
Well, and I think to understand what they mean by geographic and demographic diversity, we have to look at the legislation, and that's not necessarily a definition that DOI would need to come up with. It would be a definition as defined in the legislation that created the council.
It's not defined, Anaya. That's the point.
Yeah, it's not defined.
No, well then, in our recommendation, we can define it in the way that we see fit, if it's not defined in the legislation.
Well, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? I mean, it's like if you have some age diversity and geographic diversity and gender diversity, I mean, it's never going to be perfect, but maybe that's why they left it kind of general.
Potentially, yeah. Can we move on down? Did anybody have any other comments on this top portion before we move on?
I'm shaking my head no, and then I realize you can't see me.
Yeah.
Nobody else is raising their hand or shaking their heads in any way.
All right. So I know, Carol, you had a question around meeting minutes. Is that something that you want to discuss right now? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think here's another lack of definition. As I served 7 times as chair of the council this year, I had exchanges with the Attorney General's office, and he indicated that administrative support was provided by the Division of Insurance, and that also needs definition. And he also said that any communications that were administrative in nature, were not subject to open records law. And I'm going to bring up yet another thing. A new bill this year added a paragraph which said that administrative matters could be taken up by any 3 council members if they are to establish, organize, and plan for the business of the advisory council. And I propose that we ask for that dispensation so that we don't spend all this time on administrative matters, and that we can, get to the heart of the matter. So yes, I think taking of the minutes is of an issue. It took me 1 year to get the meeting recorded. If you recall, we were initially told we couldn't. So I asked for a dispensation under the Americans with Disability Act. I wrote the commissioner, I wrote the Attorney General, and that's how we got it done. There's a lot of resistance to support this committee fully, and it's been identified that they don't have the budget. So I think this is of concern. And I wouldn't put down in here something that's going to last 10 years, which is going to, tie the hands of a future group when it is specifically not in the legislation.
So, Carol, moving forward, since we can record with video currently, would you feel comfortable with us as a council making a recommendation to the commissioner to provide note-taking support from DOI for the future when we're not meeting virtually any longer?
Well, I would ask for permanent note-taking support, but also a definition from the Attorney General's office of what administrative support means. I think we need it as much as we need in some of these other terms, is what is administrative support? The AG told me that I would have any administrative support, and that wasn't the case.
Okay, so until we get that clarification, I don't feel comfortable changing this particular bullet because it is currently the understanding of DOI that that is a responsibility of the council. I'm happy if we want to put together a recommendation to the commissioner making that request, and if we want to reach out to the AG to get those definitions from them. But currently,
I'm not sure where you're getting this. It's currently their understanding. They made that request this year, but that has no basis in statute.
What has no basis in statute?
Meeting minutes will be taken by a member of the council. I know of that language in no other council that's been legislated.
Right, but it wasn't clear in the legislation for this council, which means that DOI has not been directed to do that. So until we get clarification or send a recommendation to the commissioner requesting that DOI provides that support, I don't know that we have the ability to require DOI to do it ourselves.
Well, we don't, I would say leave it out. It's fine for me to leave it out. It is an undefined issue.
So you want to just take that bullet and delete it?
Yes.
Does everybody else, does anyone have any feelings on that?
So since we are recording our minutes, can we instead say something that minutes of the meeting are captured in the video recording, posted at the CIC website?
Yes.
I think we can for now, and we can in the future if we continue, even when we're meeting in person again,
Correct.
to stream this and record it.
Yes. And then, as we're doing with the other item, then this is a topic for a potential recommendation that we get somebody from hopefully from the division who can provide more administrative support than we currently have. Yep. We have some administrative support. Thank you, Bobby. So, but we want more. We want something specific around written meeting minutes. But for now, meeting minutes are reflected in the video that is posted to the website.
And Bobby and Matt, once we start meeting in person again, do the meeting rooms at DOI have the ability for us to continue as a group still using Google Meets and able to record in that setting so that we can continue to post video?
I'm not entirely sure. I think we have one conference room that allows us to stream, but not all of the conference rooms. So we would have to look at availability.
So the body, I think it's something that we could probably do just using a laptop, and we could set it up just like we do any other kind of Google Meets kind of thing. So there should be a way. I mean, we should be able to figure out a way.
Perfect. Eileen, can you talk me through that language again?
Certainly. Minutes of the meetings will be found in video recordings posted on, I want to say the CIC website, but it's probably more officially the Division of Insurance CIC website.
So again, guys, you know, I have 2 pages of minutes that were required to support the video recording that I prepared in draft form. And I also prepared the updated CIC recommendations chart. So I don't believe that the video is anything more than backup. I think you still have to put the action items. I think you still have to put the action items into a minutes form.
And our recommendations still go on the website as well. Those are posted on the website as well as the commissioner's responses.
And Carol, it's the very next bullet. An updated list of council proposals, recommendations resulting from the proposals and responses to recommendations will be maintained. So minutes are just what has occurred in the meeting. The actions and the proposals and the recommendations, those all have to be documented as well. That's not an issue.
Okay, so whatever you approved here was therefore unnecessary.
Well, we took away the sentence that said that somebody from the council has to take minutes, which implied writing and having that responsibility taken by somebody on the council. We replaced that with the fact that the minutes of the meetings are in the video recordings.
Yep. And I don't know, does anybody feel like outside of the video recordings that there is any necessary reason to have a written summary of the meetings?
If you ever use it for word searching or trying to search for a topic over a lot of documents at once, sometimes that's quicker, but I don't know that we can do that now anyway, right?
I'm nodding. And again, the meat is in the recommendations and the proposals and all of that, so.
Okay. Do we feel okay moving on?
Yes. He's shaking my head.
Okay. All right. Down to the meetings section. Anybody, I know there's a couple of changes that people have proposed. Anybody have any questions on those changes, concerns around the changes, or additional changes they would like to make?
So everything looks good to me, so.
That last one that says quorum, question mark.
Right.
Yep.
That
We
was,
need to figure out what we want to define quorum.
Yeah, because I was going to say, we don't want to leave the question marks there, but.
no, I know that. Sorry.
Are you
I
wanting
meant,
to comment on all of these?
What was that?
Are you wanting comments on all the bullet items if there's any? Or just?
Yeah, in the meetings section, if there's any additional comments or changes, or any disagreement with the changes that have been proposed, and then we can talk about how we want to define it.
Okay. It says the council can meet at other locations, so we could meet at a park if we wanted to.
yeah, that part was put in there to give us the opportunity to travel around the state, getting back to what we were talking about with demographic representation and making sure that we weren't all Denver focused here, but you're totally
That's a good idea.
Yeah, we could totally do it in the park. And I did mean to say I was okay up until that last bullet. I apologize.
Yeah, and I think I agree. I think a park meeting would be great. I worry about public access if we're meeting in a park, and the ability to still use Google Meets to document.
You have to be someplace where you get Wi-Fi and set up a meeting, right?
Exactly.
You got a VPN.
Yeah.
Oh, this is Mark Wynn. I'm thinking Vail.
There are some parks out there that have Wi-Fi, some city parks.
I think we should go to Pagosa
I
Springs.
have another question. I don't know if anybody can see my hand.
I can't see anything on the video right now, so if you have questions.
I apologize. I believe I brought this up last time, but it's back in council procedures about the term consensus.
And
So-
we haven't gotten to that definition yet. That's further down.
Oh, I thought we were beyond it.
Nope. It says it, but that's not where it's defined. I believe it's further down in the document, so we'll get there.
Okay, well, here's the problem, Anaya. It says that all members may request topics. I'm sorry, the council must act by consensus, and that there is no objection from any council member for the action proposed. The Attorney General clarified that in the executive session, that a minority position may be reflected, and the advice was that it be documented, the minority opinion.
So, Anaya, it is further up in the document, so and so it's above the meeting section. So let's finish with the meeting section is my recommendation, and then we'll do consensus the very next thing.
Yes. So in the meeting section, are all of these changes up to that last bullet okay with everyone? If you're nodding your head, I can't see you.
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
Yes, is Mark Wynn.
All right. Let's look at. Anybody want to throw out how we want to define quorum?
I think that last sentence, I mean, the majority of the members, does that mean, so if there's 10 members, there's got to be 6 members present?
Yeah, so just I think a simple majority is a really easy way to do it. But I'm also open to hearing other proposals if people want more nuance than that.
Well, I'll say again, defined last July 10th by the Attorney General, it was clear that if we're going to vote on something, we must have at minimum a majority of the number of council members appointed. So right now we have 9. So to do anything today, we would have to have 5, any recommendations and so forth. So he identified that. He said he identified that there is no definition of consensus.
Yes. And that's why we're coming up with our definition now.
But we can't come up with a definition for action items. He was clear on that. Action items has to be a minimum of a majority of the total.
Right. And that's what this proposal is a simple majority. Do we want to make it higher than that is the question. We have to have at least a majority, but we can
be higher than 2/3. I don't think, but I'm okay with 2/3 too.
I'm very comfortable with the simple majority, and as long as it meets the requirements for being able to vote as well. So, yeah. Mr. Wynn is saying 5 out of 9 is perfect, so.
Yeah, this is Peg. I'm okay with a simple majority, because if we get into the 2/3 or something higher, we're not ever, I mean, it might be hard to achieve that.
Great. All right. Everybody okay with that then?
Sure.
Yes, 2 words. I heard 2 people. I have to change my layout again to see people. Nobody's shaking their head, so I think that's a good sign.
All right, let's jump back up to this bullet. The council must act by consensus, which means that the council reached general agreement and that there is no objection from any council member for the action proposed. Carol, I'm happy to add in council members are able to either give written or verbal statements of dissent. But I don't think that that's necessarily, the sentence isn't saying that council members can't dissent. They're saying that there is no objection to move an action forward.
I think the wording should say, and that minority opinions are expressed. If you don't want it written, it was suggested that, again, the language that we have from the AG's office is that he recommended that we send to the commissioner what that minority opinion might be.
Great.
Not just say that this was not unanimous, but
yeah,
that try to define why there's a minority opinion and that he understands that's out there.
Great. So what if we add the council must act by consensus, which means that the council reached general agreement and that there is no objection from any council member for the action proposed, and minority opinions are able to be expressed if existing. Does that?
Yeah.
Cool. Is everybody good with that language?
Well, this is Mark Wynn. So this means if one of the 9 of us say, no way, I don't want this going forward to the commissioner, it ain't going forward to the commissioner. Is that correct?
Correct, because that would be an objection to the action proposed.
Yep.
So
Okay.
Yeah, what we're saying is that we would have general consensus that we agree with the action to be proposed, and we might have a dissenting opinion about it, but we don't have any heartburn, and we can let the action go ahead. But if you do have heartburn and you're like, no way, I do not support this, then we have not achieved consensus.
So I beg your pardon. When I said it was okay, I thought you had removed the language. I believe we want to remove the language that there is no objection from any council member for the action proposed. I would like that, formally ask that be removed.
But Carol, no objection for the action is different than disagreement with the recommendation.
Correct.
No objection
I
means that everybody on the council has agreed to move the recommendation forward and can then express verbally or in writing, which will be shared with the commissioner, what their dissenting opinion is.
What I would see is that we'll have people who want to exempt themselves, that there's a conflict of interest. I see people who have no opinion one way or another, whether this is a recommendation. I see people who have sponsored the recommendation are passionate about it. And I see people who in general feel this doesn't serve their constituents.
Mm-hmm.
So
and this bullet doesn't disallow any of that to occur.
Correct.
Sounds like it does.
No, because the distinction is, are you opposed to this action? Opposed, not, it's not my first choice. I wouldn't necessarily do it that way. I agree that it's a good thing. We should move forward. I'll explain what my concerns are in a document. Okay, that's different from, this is the worst idea I have ever heard, and I am not supporting it. That is what we're trying to avoid. And we don't want to get into a situation where we're doing majority rule, because then you have, board stacking and, just all sorts of stuff. The idea here is to come to consensus. We can live with this particular proposal. It may not be our first choice if we were in charge and we were able to be king of the world, but we don't have any heartburn about it. That's why I keep using that expression. That's what we do in a consensus-oriented organization.
Well, and agreement in those situations where it might not best serve whatever constituency we represent, but understand that it does best serve the majority of the state.
Exactly.
But at any rate, if a consensus is not reached, we're not presenting that issue to the commissioner?
Correct.
Correct.
So if there's one person that just says, I don't like this, we can't present that issue to the commissioner and have that person present their objection.
So in consensus-based decision-making, what happens in those situations is we would have to have a conversation about why and see if there are changes that can be made to the recommendation to get everybody on the same page to feel comfortable moving it. And I think as a group that represents a very diverse state, those are conversations we're going to have to move recommendations forward sometimes. And I think that's important, and I think it's part of the work that we're tasked to do.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with anything, and I don't think that it would be a problem with this group, but there could be a situation where someone's just a naysayer on everything, and then that would, the problem, and I'm just worst case devil's advocate, that then the council would never get anything done and never be able to make any recommendations.
Yeah, and that could very well happen, Peg. That is very, very true. So.
So in that case, you would almost have the other council members vote that person off the island.
Yeah, we can always, in that situation, we could always request that the commissioner relook at that person's ability to sit on the council.
Yeah,
there you go. Or wait them out.
I just wanted to bring that up as devil's advocate, because most of us are accustomed to majority rules, not by consensus. So
yeah, and I think that the hard thing, and I agree, especially in situations like this, I fully agree with consensus-based decision making, and regardless of whether or not I do, that's what's in the statute.
So we have 5 people here today. And so at the end of these kinds of matters here, if we don't have a unanimous 5 vote for this, then these will not pass.
So again, unanimous is different than consensus.
Correct.
Not all 5 of us have to say, like, this is the best idea I've ever heard and I'm in love with it. And yes, I want it. We can absolutely say this idea is subpar, but it will support the most people in the state. So I will get on board with it.
So like that one bullet point for me, I wouldn't recommend it, but I'm not gonna say no way, no how.
Exactly. You're not going to obstruct it, Peg. You're going to say, you know, I wish we had a more specific definition around all of this, but for us to move forward, you know, this will suffice. We'll work with this for now, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't think diversity should be considered an obstruction.
I'm not saying that.
It's not.
The obstruction is somebody saying I cannot support these principles the way they're. Period.
Yeah.
That's an obstruction.
That's not an obstruction. That's an opinion.
It is an opinion that is blocking the moving forward of the draft operating principles. So therefore, it's an obstruction.
Okay, so I am going to ask that this sentence be reviewed by the AG.
For what purpose?
I think it's in conflict with what he told us last summer.
Can I make a proposal? I think that the portion of the sentence that says that the council reached general agreement means what we need it to mean. And if we change the sentence to stating the council must act by consensus, which means that the council reached general agreement for the action proposed, and minority opinions are able to be expressed and shared with the commissioner if existing. I think that still meets what we would want it to. I mean, a general agreement to me is also consensus. I have no issue with the remainder of the sentence, but if it's a stress point for the council as a whole, I think that we can remove that portion of the language.
I think that's a good compromise, but like you and I was comfortable with the initial language. So Carol, if we take out that phrase that says there is no objection from any council member, if we remove that altogether, can you live with the way we are defining consensus in this document?
Absolutely. I thought you were doing that.
So can everybody read this bullet as existing now and let me know if everyone feels comfortable moving forward?
Yeah, based on
I think that works better.
Sorry.
Peg
was
said
that?
yes, and I think Chuck said yes.
Yeah, I mean, based on the discussion, I'd say yes.
And Mr. Mark Wynn, I'm so confused because it says Virginia, and I don't want to call you Virginia. Thank you, Mark. Mark says okay. So, and then Carol.
Absolutely, yeah.
Great. We have achieved
Moving right along.
Sorry. Okay.
All right.
A dumb
We
question.
are.
Quorum.
Wait, hold on a
Almost
second,
done.
Anaya. I know, 1 second. Chuck has a question. Go ahead,
Yeah.
sir.
I know this is low odds, but since we have such a small group, when you're talking about a quorum being a simple majority, so we have the next meeting, five makes a quorum, but what if the 2 people missing are the chair and the vice chair? I know that probably wouldn't happen, but do we have a meeting without a chair and a vice chair?
I think we could. I
caught that, Mark. I caught that, Mark.
I think that could happen. I think that in a situation like that, the council is also able to reschedule the meeting if that feels like a better choice. I don't think in the future or currently a chair or vice chair would be individuals who wouldn't give a heads up to people as much as possible.
But technically, that means a quorum is a majority plus one of the officers, or one of the, the chair or the vice chair has to show up.
I mean, we can put that in the document if we want that as a requirement, but I don't
I
necessarily.
if it's strong enough to need that. I just happen to think about that. It's like, well, we have such a small group and we don't have a secretary or a treasurer or any other officer, right?
Yep. Does anybody have any thoughts on that or concerns around it?
Well, Bobby, don't you know ahead of time, because we kind of have our meetings scheduled laid out for the year. If Anaya and Eileen can't attend, I'm assuming you would email Bobby and say, hey, by the way, I'm gonna be out of town, or I can't attend the meeting, and then Bobby sends out a communication that says, hey, do we want to reschedule? Both Anaya and Eileen are gonna be out of town, and then everybody says, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I think the only, and Chuck, maybe this is what you were trying to get at. If Eileen and I or a future chair and vice chair happen to have an emergency or illness on the same day, then we wouldn't necessarily be able to give.
Or you both decide to hit the brew pub at lunch or something, you know, you just really want to do it.
Well, it'd have to be a very early brunch to miss these meetings. Which I'm not opposed to a Wednesday
me
brunch.
neither. Oh, that's funny.
But yeah, I think in most cases, we would know ahead of time if the chair and vice chair wouldn't both be present at a meeting, but in a weird circumstance where that doesn't happen, I also don't see a situation where a meeting couldn't start and the council decide to postpone if that happened. I also don't see any reason why the council couldn't manage, if there's still a majority of members present, why the council couldn't manage moving through a meeting without the chair and vice chair.
Okay.
But I think it's also a valid question to bring up, Chuck, for sure.
Yeah, I just thought I'd ask. It's not a big deal, but I mean.
And if we see that it is an issue for some reason in the future, we can always edit and update this if we need to. I see this as being a living document, and there are going to be potential changes necessary in the future that we don't know about yet. Does that feel good for everybody?
More nods around the room.
Yes. Really.
So we are in, and Carol, thank you actually for pointing out that consensus piece. I thought it was further down and it wasn't, because we're in the last section now. Any concerns, changes, edits, clarifications necessary in this compensation section?
None by me.
Anaya, since we're at the end of the document, I do recommend that your prior comment be codified in that this is not legislation, this is a living document. However, one sentence to say that the operating, aren't they just called guidelines anyway?
Principles, operating principles.
Okay. Well, in any event, I think a one sentence disclaimer of it being, you know, I mean, obviously it's always subject to future situations, just like the pandemic, you know.
Yeah. Does that sentence I just typed in there, Carol, work? And does it work for everyone else?
Yep.
Okay with me.
Sure.
Great. And then any last thoughts on the compensation piece at all? Great. Any thoughts or items that people feel we have forgotten from this document?
Well, this is Mark Wayne. You might want to date it.
Yes.
And that way, when the first revision comes, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Well, give it a revision number too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Remember the old business stuff.
Yeah.
Again, I hate to be nitpicking, but back down there under reimbursements, and I know that Dora pointed this out earlier in the year, is that they don't permit parking in the same fashion that the legislation permits it. And it has not been an issue this year, but that's why we got a form that didn't include parking. So I would question if the reimbursements are in accordance with the legislation or with DORA. Policies and procedures.
Does anybody happen to know what the legislation outlines as far as expenses?
Well, because I was involved in it, yes. I mean, the clear things that were added were parking for people within 25 miles, because the old thing used to be you had to be 25 miles away or you wouldn't get mileage, and that parking was not allowed. So I think those were the two key things added by the legislator herself. Was the dependent care.
I'm sorry, Carol, can you back up? I'm confused. Was parking in the legislation, was parking included or not included?
Included.
I'm pulling it up right now, Anaya, so just give me a moment, please.
What is the parking situation? I've never been there. Are you talking about when people show up for the meeting at the office?
It's dreadful, Chuck. Dreadful.
Oh, no.
And very spendy too. So it's really important that it was.
I made up a parking map in January. Again, we didn't have to use it much, of all the cheap places to park, and we surveyed the meters, and we tried to give everybody the cheapest alternative.
Yeah, so.
All right, I'm reading the actual legislation. Members of the council shall serve without compensation, but are entitled to reimbursement for actual and necessary expenses incurred in traveling to and from council meetings, including any required dependent care and dependent or attendant travel, food, and lodging expenses. It does not have the word parking in it. I did a word search, and park is not in there at all. So,
yeah, but that general travel, to me, travel also means parking, because you're in your car.
Absolutely, I agree with you on that.
But I don't believe DORA has that policy in effect. I believe DORA has rules. All I'm saying is this sentence that it'll be in accordance with the policies of DORA is a little bit different than the stipulations of the legislation.
Oh, Bobby or Matt, can you provide more clarity around the reimbursement guidelines, principles that DORA has?
I'm going to have to defer to Bobby because I wasn't involved in the last Consumer Insurance Council. I don't know how it worked there.
We didn't have any reimbursement at all last time, Matt. Zero, none.
Which is why it sounds like we're going to have to figure it out. We're more than happy to go back and see kind of what forms or how other boards or groups get reimbursement. I can track down if they have reimbursement forms or things like that and bring them back to the group.
That'd be awesome. That'd be really awesome, Matt. I mean, that's, to Carol's point, that's exactly why this stuff is was put specifically in the legislation when we got recreated, because we were just out of luck. Too bad. Too bad, too sad.
So yeah, I'll do some digging.
Thanks,
yeah,
Matt.
and so DORA does reimburse for actual expenses, which would include parking. It is not specifically on the reimbursement form. The mileage is on the form. Lodging can be added to the form, and then parking is considered a miscellaneous expense. The only thing that is required is that all receipts are necessary before you'll get reimbursed. So if you got to pay, $15 for parking, you just need to submit the receipt with that, and DORA makes the decision. But it's the statute, I think, is fairly clear that it's actual expenses incurred. So
correct. But the problem, of course,
something like and miscellaneous necessary expenses.
right. I mean, because that's what it says in the legislation. But I want to go back to receipts, which I understand the need for. But if you park at a meter, you're never getting a receipt. So by incenting us to pay $15 to go to a lot just so we could get a receipt, when we could spend $2 to plug it into a meter that we don't get a receipt for, that I have problems with that. But I mean, if that's DORA's processes, then I'll pay the $15.
Well, I could take a picture of my car sitting at the meter.
Oh, I love that one, Chuck. That's really good.
Usually receipts are not required for meters, Eileen. That would not be typical of the state. They usually have a level where a receipt is required. I've worked for the state for whatever 35 years. You know, there always were minimum, just like tips, you know, different things like that you would simply document, and it would be according to you. I believe you allowed that to happen in January, February when we began, Bobby.
And so to Matt's point, I mean, we can certainly go back and look at the reimbursement requirements, but I do agree that if there's a minimal amount, so I don't know if that's $5, but if you put $2 into a meter, you can claim the $2 without a receipt. But we can verify that with Dora.
Yeah, you usually just make your own receipt, identify it, time, date.
So now that Bobby's clarified we can get reimbursed for parking, do we feel like in the document we want to specify parking, or do we feel comfortable that that just falls under travel expenses?
I feel comfortable that it falls under travel expenses. I have the form that Bobby sent us last year, which I'm happy to share with everybody. Or well, I can't share with everybody. Bobby will share with everybody. Never mind. Never mind.
But is there a spot in the reimbursement form for necessary miscellaneous expenses, just as a general?
Yes, there
phrase?
is.
So
yes,
we add that here as a comma, just miscellaneous necessary. I don't know what those would be. I mean,
no,
who can say?
Yeah,
I don't think we would need to. I think that's that's part of the reimbursement form, not necessarily what we are able to be reimbursed for.
Yeah,
I also don't want to add too much language outside of what's in the statute.
Right, and that's my point, Anaya, that, you know, the word miscellaneous expenses is not in the statute, but all these words are in the statute, so.
It was a significant change to the council, and it was one of the big deals of trying to get more participation and from different geographic areas.
Great. So now that we know what can be reimbursed, can we get a motion to approve the operating principles so that we can get them onto the website?
I so move.
Can we get a second?
I'll second.
Everyone in favor? Adopting the operating principles?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyone opposed? Great. We have operating principles, y'all. Bobby, if we can get those added to the website, that would be fantastic.
Can we do celebration? Woohoo!
Yeah, Anaya, if you want to send me the Google Doc,
Yep.
I will get those posted along with the meeting minutes.
Great. All right, moving on down the agenda. We're only 3 minutes behind, friends.
More celebration. Woohoo!
We are going to move on to recommendations. It looks like, does everybody have the recommendations list that Bobby sent out? Or do you want me to share my screen again with that?
I want you to share your screen. This is Mark 1.
Okay. All right, so we are first going to look at R3, which I believe was revised. Does anybody, or does the person who brought this recommendation want to speak about it?
I brought it. Do you have the revision?
This is all the information that I had on the recommendations list. Did you send the revision separately?
Well,
or did you update it here?
I updated it with the minutes.
So Anaya, I believe what Carol's referring to is the document that Bobby sent out at the beginning of the meeting.
That is this.
The one that has the revision. Oh, you are looking at this one. Okay, so So where did you make the revision, Carol?
Well, it's this issue of where does this document exist? Where is the mother document? But not knowing that, I will simply present this, and unfortunately, I'm going to have to do a certain amount of reading of the document. But so this was submitted, if I may.
Mhm.
Are you good with going forward with it?
He said
Okay,
yes.
Anaya?
He said yes.
Okay. All right. So again, if you look at the format of these recommendations, this was submitted by an individual consumer May 20th, 2020. It was submitted to the council October 7th, 2020, and it was revised January 6th, 2021. So all of that is on the document that I have in front of me. And the initial consumer input was the DOI website should be user-friendly, not the cumbersome site that it is. As it is now, it discourages consumer use. And the council said that wasn't enough information. They deferred that October 7th, 2020. And the council solicits additional information was the note that was put in there. So I have fleshed out this, which was not from me personally, but I summarized it as follows. The recommendation was to assess the division website with consumer assistance to ensure effectiveness in public communication. And the rationale, there are
Sorry, Carol, can you go back and say that a little more slowly? I'm trying to type it in to the document. Assess the website.
Assess division website with consumer assistance to ensure effectiveness in public communication. And the rationale, then following the usual typical thing, there were four bullet points. And I think I'll just identify the 4 bullet points first. The first one is to solicit ongoing feedback and continuous quality improvement.
And the second?
The second is to review the website navigation.
Keep going.
Is that the?
Evaluate content.
Sorry.
Evaluate content.
Keep going, Carol.
And the fourth is to assess the content for readability, understandability, and transparency. So now I'll just talk about these 4.
And one moment, Carol. So, and then your second bullet, Anaya, is actually supposed to be 2. Review. Correct. You got it. Okay, Carol.
Okay, so I'll talk about the rest of this, but frankly, I can send the typed copy of this to whoever would be appropriate. So
I just got it in the recommendations document, so we should be okay.
Okay, so what we're looking for here from this member who proposed, or not member, from this person who proposed this last May, is to improve the DOI. Take a look at the DOI website. So number 1, this solicit ongoing feedback. And the narrative under that is seek public input with on-site surveys, follow-up, and focus groups about the website. Ask open-ended and closed-ended survey questions to get public input on the website. Secure outside assistance for best practices.
Hold on, Carol, can you back up and start over so I can add that into the recommendation portion?
You want to type in all of this?
I'm thinking it sounds like it's maybe a whole page, Anaya, and I know, I know you're a fast typist, but I do believe that we need to get this incorporated here. But I'd rather spend the time talking about what we're trying to accomplish here.
Right. And Carol, if you can get whatever that document is that you're reading to Bobby can get it me, and then I can update the recommendation.
Yeah, Bobby has it. Yeah, Bobby has it. I sent it to her in early January. So
Okay.
it's in there, Bobby. It may not be the version that you sent out, but you do have it. Yeah. So anyway, the first one again is to solicit ongoing feedback. Again, this bullet point, or this number one, is to ask the consumers what the problems with the websites are, asking open-ended and closed-ended survey questions as an example, and to secure outside website assistance for best practices on a public communication site. So the example given is for those of us, many of us, who've tried to use the insurance rate comparison tools. So the request is to have things so that they're more usable by the routine consumer, who's trying to compare rate increases, trying to read that rate portion of the website as an example. The second bullet is to review website navigation. And there are a couple of things here: searchability issues and mechanics. Okay, so searchability issues. How well can the public search the website? Does a search bar exist that would bring up all the places the consumer can be helped? Can one figure out where to go? Are there multiple ways to get their links? Is terminology consistent? And is there mobile access, since this is the day of mobility? So those were the points that were put under website navigation. Searchability issues. Mechanics, does the website use up bandwidth on photos, images, and other optional content? People have expressed that, these large photos and so forth don't never necessarily help a consumer with a poor device. What devices can be used to load the DOI website? Is the site speed being reviewed? Is the website mobile enabled and effective for people who are trying to use mobile devices? So the third bullet here is to evaluate the content. Is the content complete, accurate, and transparent, and is it up to date? I went into some sites and I found very old data that had been superseded, so it had not been proofed recently. Are all documents dated and identified as to the author, the contact for questions? Are there out-of-date materials that pull up more readily than current documents? Is content reviewed for errors? Is there a way to notify of errors? Okay, so here's one thing that I noted when I was trying to just do some proofing. An article posted by the assistant commissioner yields no text, just characters and wingdings, a download or posting error. So in other words, is somebody proofing for issues like that? And there's no way to provide feedback. There's nothing at the bottom that says if you have a website error, or please contact so-and-so, or if you have IT issues. The next bullet point, or the final bullet point, is to assess the content for readability, understandability, and transparency. So as people who write, they usually do the readability score, especially for non-English as a first language people. You would tend to do a readability score on any narrative that you posted on a website. What is the readability score? Well, I just took a paragraph and took a look at it. 6th to 8th grade is what's recommended on that, and this came up 11th grade and higher. There's a lot of jargon used out there that's industry jargon. Acronym usage is common, and it's a deterrent to the routine consumer. And that continues with transparency is needed to the consumer facing page. I think I'm on.
Carol, can I interrupt you for a moment, please?
Sure.
Anaya, I just forwarded the document that Carol is reading from. That was attached to her email back in January. But it had a January 2020 date, so I didn't realize that was the most current document. So so I just forwarded that to everybody. So everything that Carol's reading, you'll have in your email soon.
Thank you very much, Bobby, and thanks for all that work that you did, Carol. That's very comprehensive. All of the parts of the recommendation that, you know, we're thinking about requesting that the commissioner take a look at.
Can I ask a question? With all those bullet points, the one area I noticed I had a problem with was the whole other half of the website, which is when you go in to create an account so that you can go in and file a complaint. And then once you're in your account, trying to find documents that may be attached to your history or other things, I found that was another whole half where it's kind of clunky sometimes to get around in it, if you know what I'm talking about, when you actually set up an account.
And I think that's why the first bullet point, Chuck, is to do some surveys of consumers and see what stumbling blocks there are, what obstacles there are in the website for people using it for different reasons. You know, so this was not an attempt to nail down every possible improvement or that kind of thing. I personally think the division may want to budget for some outside assistance and as well as ongoing assistance to keep this current, you know, this issue of mobile enabled. It's kind of important. A lot of people using their mobile devices, their phones and so forth. People in the rural areas, you know, the whole thing, non-English as a first language. I think you could barely get through this website if you have some of these, if you're not as enhanced as some of us are.
Yeah, and Chuck, I agree. I think this recommendation does cover the website as a whole, regardless of the pages that you're trying to utilize. I think it's a good recommendation. There's also a bill this legislative session around state website accessibility. So if that passes, a lot of the things in this recommendation will be a requirement and will be funded, which is great because also a lot of this would cost DOI a lot of money that they don't necessarily have in the budget. But that piece of legislation, I think, aligns really well with this recommendation. So I think this is a really great timing to make it.
Well, I know just a comment because not everybody that goes out there, only a few people are going to go out there probably and actually open up and create a kind of user account and file a complaint against an insurance company or whatever. So they may never see that whole other half, but.
Yeah. So can we get a motion to move this recommendation forward to the commissioner?
I so move.
In a second.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Everybody's saying aye and waving, or
Great.
not waving.
Anyone opposed? Great.
Really great job, Carol. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Moving forward, looks like we have R4. This is another one that we've had for a while. I think one of the things that we may want to look at as a council moving forward too is when there's a proposed issue, it gets added to this with a recommendation and rationale attached as well. But if we want to work through this and create a recommendation and rationale, we can. Or whoever proposed it, if they want to go back and do what Carol just did and bring it back to the next meeting, we can do that as well. Does anybody have a preference?
I guess this is Mark one. I don't understand what is this? The DOI was requesting at least. So is this person asking not to allow insurance companies to ask for credit history? Is that what this is asking?
Yep, that's what you're saying. When actually underwriting or creating an automobile insurance policy, not even to look at person's credit history. But it was submitted by an individual consumer. Sorry, I apologize. Chuck, go ahead.
I've gotten burnt by that before because a year or so ago, they raised my rate and said it's because of your credit. And I found out it was an error on my credit report. I said, can you fix it? And they said, we're not even going to disclose why we think that your credit report had a problem on it. And I had to go get my own credit report. It's just a hassle. I don't think credit history should be used. I think it's like a doctor's office using your social security number. I don't think it's appropriate. That's just my opinion. I think that credit history should be for getting loans. It shouldn't be for things like insurance. But so I agree with this person who sent this in.
Yeah, I agree too. I think it also disallows a lot of people to get covered with auto insurance and to get covered with auto insurance at reasonable rates if they have never carried debt.
Yeah, they don't have a credit history.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Okay.
I think your incident history is more important than your credit history on auto insurance.
absolutely.
If you have no credit and you have no incidents, you should still have a pretty good rate. But if you have a lot of incidents and you have good credit, I mean, that's really where they should raise your rate.
Well, yeah, and I know they say there's a relationship, but that we've had errors on our credit report, and you have to go dig them out yourself and try and get them fixed. And if I have no accidents in 20 years, I should get a good rate based on my age. So they should only be able to use geography and age and things like that. But
Absolutely. Do we want to try to flesh out a recommendation today? I don't know who submitted this one as far as council member goes. Carol, do you want to work on putting together a recommendation? I'm also happy to do that before the next meeting.
So this was a question that I had raised before. You know, when we first kicked off, I got a bunch of recommendations from the public.
Mhm.
And sometimes they're not in an insurance area I know anything about. They were just like a one sentence kind of thing. They said, you need to take this to the CIC. It takes a long time to do what I did for the website one. Mm-hmm. You're talking many hours to look over the website and flesh out this person's concern. I knew portions of the issue. I know nothing about auto insurance. I'm delighted to hear Chuck come up with some items. So that became the question of when is it okay to submit something to the commissioner with just a bit of brevity, or as the website said, we would participate in a focus group with you if you created one, you know, so that we could flesh this out rather than having to write a thesis every time we, you know, submit a recommendation. So that's my question.
And I don't think that I don't think our recommendations need to be long. I think that when we put issues forth, we just need to follow the format that we've created as a council.
Right.
And that doesn't, I mean, we could do that in 5 minutes. Or we could create something that's much more put together, like the one that you did for the last recommendation, Carol. But I think it can be either or. I think we just need to make sure that we're following the process that we've created.
I agree with the format, yeah. So all I'm saying is I have nothing further to add to this. You all have already added more than I knew.
Well, since Chuck has experience with this issue, can he put together something?
Well, I can put it together, my rationale, what upsets me about it. I don't know if that'd be comprehensive because I haven't had lots and lots of cases of that, but I have had a personal experience with that. And it just brought home that point that I just think it's an inappropriate use of a credit, inappropriate use of a tool that was designed for, you know, through, you know, FICO for banks and loans and all that. I don't think employers should be using it for hiring somebody either. And you know, whether it helps them or not, I don't care. It's still inappropriate. So I can just list a couple points that I object to that have been my experience. I'm not sure what else you were thinking, but.
Yeah. Bobby,
And the question is, can we do this without delaying a quarter of the year?
Hold on 1 second, Carol. Bobby, what were you?
If I may, credit scoring, credit insurance scoring has been around for quite some time, and it is statutorily allowed in both Title 10 and the federal law. So while I think it would be great to, you know, make a recommendation to have discussions, which we have discussions regularly about the use of credit. But until the statute is changed, the insurance companies will be allowed to use it in some form or another. So just 2 cents on that.
Yeah, and I agree, Bobby. It's not necessarily us making this recommendation isn't necessarily going to change it. But I think having documentation of consumer groups like us pushing for that change is always helpful to move things forward.
And also another point would be when I contacted my insurance company and said, hey, you've got a general statement saying my rate went up due to credit issues, and I know I've got a good credit score. I found out it was a mistake, but I asked them, I said, can you disclose to me what it was in my credit score that caused my rate to go up? And they said, no, we don't have to tell you that, and we won't. Is there any way to make them disclose to me specifically if my rate went up due to something in my credit report, that they would be required to disclose that to me so I can go check it out and see if it's an error?
So there is a requirement for insurance companies if your rate goes up and you request clarification on the reason it went up, they do have to provide that to you.
They didn't tell me. They said they only said it was a general statement that something in your credit report was used in a calculation. And they wouldn't get specific with me. They said that it was just they used the form, they used their own FICO score, and that it was lower than it should have been, and that they ran it through a calculation, and that information is privy to their internal, I don't know, way of calculating it, and they wouldn't tell me specifically. It was just a general statement that they put on your declaration page, and I didn't think that was quite fair, because then I had to go dig around and guess what it might have been, and by then I've already paid this increased rate, even if it turned out to be an error.
So when you get that disclosure, you can request, just like you can if your insurance goes up from driving history, you can request further information from the insurance company.
I guess the next time that happened, I can try. But when I did it before, they just said, oh, well, you're entitled to a free credit report from freecreditreport.com. Go look at it, but we're not going to change what we've done. Our FICO score, we're standing by it, and we're not going to change your insurance rate. And I didn't think that was fair. It turned out it was only a little bit of money. It was only $20 or $50 or whatever. But the fact that they would say, even if I fix my credit score, they wouldn't go back and reevaluate that. I didn't like that. That was a big insurance company that told me that. Their people said, we're not going to go back and reevaluate you, even if you find an error in your credit report. We've done what we've done. We've rated you, and that's it. And so I didn't think that was quite fair. So legally, they may be able to use a credit score, but I don't think they're doing it right. And I think that's not in the consumer's best interest. That's just my opinion. I think that it's a real hassle for a consumer to go through that process. And anyway.
Bobby, did you have something?
Yeah, so to Chuck's point, so the statute does require the companies, if the consumer asks that the credit be rerun, the company does have to do that. So if you fix something in your credit report or identify, bad information and it gets fixed, then you have the right to ask the company to rerun that credit score.
But can they rerun
in that particular situation, I from consumer services would recommend you file a complaint, and our office would look into that particular practice because that is in the statute. Yeah, that's all I have.
It takes months sometimes to correct an issue in your credit. We found mistakes on ours, and we've had to go jump through the hoops with, Experian or Equifax, whoever it was, to try and get those mistakes cleared. And it might be 6 months or sometime down the road before those mistakes were actually cleared. By then, I've already paid the extra premiums. That would be my concern, is if it was significant, can I go back and say, hey, you need to rerun this and re-rate me and give me a credit back if I was right? Or can they just stonewall me and say, well, we're not going to do that, or I don't know. It was just a frustration for me at the time. This was a couple years ago.
Yeah, that makes sense. That sounds frustrating.
One more comment. One of our duties is to recommend legislation. So if there's a statute that we think it's past due to be changed, then one of our duties is to recommend state legislation and to recommend that the commissioner support legislation. So that would be something we could do.
And that's something we could include in this recommendation if we want to.
Yeah.
So, Chuck, would you feel comfortable taking this issue and fleshing it out to fit into the structure we've set up for recommendations?
I mean, I can put in, I can go with my experience and put in some stuff. I don't know how much detail you want there. Do you just want examples of maybe what I experienced or what I would like to see happen? If I can't change the law, is there any way, is there any room in there to make it more fair to the consumer who's trying to buy that product?
Yeah, and I don't think you need to be as specific with your personal situation if you don't want to. I want to make sure just
help me come up with.
This goes on the DOI website, so I don't want you to share whatever you're not feeling comfortable with having on the internet.
Well, I'm just saying, I don't have to put my own personal information, but my experience probably has happened to other people. So yeah, it's worth, if you're looking for like a little bit longer of a description there with some bullet items or things that we're specifically concerned about. I don't know the law. I don't have a legal background as far as like what insurance companies really can do.
Yeah, and I think it needs to be that detailed. We just need the issue statement, the recommendation, and it can be brief. Okay. I think the way that this is currently worded nearly works as a recommendation. Okay. And then the rationale, which can just be some bullet points around.
I probably can't come up with what Carol is very good at research. You came up with giant documents and stuff. I probably wouldn't be able to do that.
It doesn't have to be that detailed. It can be brief.
And is there any way we can approve the concept and then he can submit that a detail so that we don't have to wait 3 months to?
I mean, another option is for us to type something out right now to be approved. I don't think as a council we can approve something we haven't seen to be moved forward.
Could we approve it by email? I mean, approve the concept, I mean, what's written there so far that this will be a recommendation? Can we? I just don't want to wait until July, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, we can approve the concept, but we can't approve the actual recommendation until we have the recommendation.
Yeah, approving the concept doesn't get us any further because we're not giving enough information to the commissioner to review and approve the actual recommendation. So
Yeah, Bobby or Matt, do either of you have any insight on whether or not we can do email votes?
This is Matt. I don't have anything about that. I don't see why you couldn't.
If it's run through the insurance council's email through Bobby.
Bobby, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I don't see why it couldn't be run through the insurance council email.
Great. So Chuck, if you can kind of flesh that out, send it to Bobby, and then Bobby can get it out to all of us for a vote so that we can get it pushed forward before July. Does that work for everyone?
We're saying yes, and you can't see us. So yes.
Okay.
So.
Oh, Chuck's going to flesh out, not flush out, huh? Okay.
Yeah. 10,000 words or less, right?
All right. Oops. R10. This is another one that we don't have a lot of. Does anybody know who brought this one? It says DORA publication titled Medicare Insurance Policies in Colorado. I have no idea what that means.
So I mean, I put it in the minutes because who did I think had this one? Wendy? It may have been Wendy. Someplace, I'm going to say 6 months ago, I believe we were asked to put a topic on the agenda and it wasn't spelled out. Anyway, suffice to say, I believe other emails of mine will show that Wendy asked for it and she's not here. So I'm going to just say we need to figure that out.
Okay. Should we table this one until July?
Yeah.
Great.
And somebody needs to be in touch with Wendy through the official mechanisms and ask her. Maybe Bobby, could you chase down whether or not she had a topic there?
Well, I can send her an email to be prepared to discuss it for the July meeting, but I don't have time to chase things down.
Yeah, I think Bobby, if you could just send an email through the council email to Wendy just to say, please be prepared to discuss this topic, and if you have any further information to get out to the council before the July meeting, we can get it distributed that way.
And ask her, was it in fact her topic? It was a real loosey-goose one that somehow got on the thing, and then we had broken up conversations.
Okay.
Thank you. Going back up to R5. This was one of those real estate questions that we weren't sure if it actually had to do with insurance or not. And somebody was going to reach out to the consumer to get clarification. Has that occurred?
No, it has not. It was the same individual who put forth all these recommendations. Didn't get that far.
Okay.
So
Great.
I can address that once we know we can get in touch with the consumer. I think what they're asking for is they did a wire transfer, and there's a lot of wire fraud right now. And they probably got instructions from a fraudulent company that made it look like it was the escrow company, and they wired their money, and then it was gone. So I don't know if they're looking for wire fraud insurance, or they're just looking for someone to be responsible for it. But I mean, escrow companies, title companies, they all alert people on a regular basis about wire fraud and warn them about that. So we can get more information from the consumer. I think we can table this.
Yeah. And Bobby or Matt, can you all clarify if it is a request from a consumer for some form of wire fraud insurance, is that something that would go under DOI, or is that something that would go under like banking or a different division?
No, I mean, if there was an insurance product that protected against wire fraud, it would fall under insurance. Yeah, it would be an insurance product, so it would be regulated by us.
Great. So, Carol, if you get clarification on what that consumer was actually asking for, can we move forward and discuss that at the July meeting if you're able to get that clarification? Or is this something that we want to recommend as a council without that clarification?
Well, I would ask Peg, do you see a recommendation here?
Well, if they're looking for insurance, some kind of like wire fraud insurance, then that would be us. If they're looking for a policy or something, then that would be more of a banking issue.
Right. So I don't know, as a council, if seeing this issue, if we want to determine that we would like to make a recommendation around the creation of some form of wire fraud insurance, or if we want to wait for that clarification from the consumer.
I think we wait for the clarification from the consumer, because we don't really know what their intent was with this comment.
Yeah, when we talked about this last time, was somebody saying it probably fell under the title company's responsibility, or what? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't fall. I mean, it basically, if you're going to wire funds, banks and title companies provide you a notice that says there's a lot of wire fraud. They won't accept email instructions. It's in person or over the phone. So people kind of need to take responsibility on this. People that are wiring their funds need to kind of take responsibility. So I don't know if they were trying to look for the bank to take responsibility, or the escrow company, or if they're looking for insurance, wire fraud insurance. That's what we don't know in this.
Okay. So we'll table it until July and hope we get some clarification by then.
Can I put the consumer directly in touch with Peg?
That's up to Peg.
Oh, yeah, yes. I mean, if you're asking me, yes, you can.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you were asking Bobby if that was okay, but yes, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's fine.
I almost feel like we mentioned this last time, but I just didn't get around to it. But that's not open records law because I would not be involved. I would simply tell the individual that there's a more expert person on the council than me to bring it forward.
Yep.
Okay, Peg, I'll see if I can do that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great. So moving forward, we are on to new recommendations on the list. Carol, do you want us as a council, we don't have a ton of time left to go through and create a recommendation around what you were talking about earlier, or is that something that you would like to create and bring to our July meeting?
What recommendation?
The recommendation around DOI providing note-taking support and clarification around what administrative support means so that we can see if DOI's interpretation of administrative support matches the definition of administrative support that we can request from the AG.
Yes, I'd like that recommendation to go forward.
But we don't have the recommendation yet. We would have to write it now, which will take time out of Bobby going over the responses from the commissioner. Or you could put it together before our next meeting and we could vote on it at our next meeting. Or you could put it together earlier and we could vote on it by email.
Let's do that.
Okay, perfect. So Carol will put that together and send it to Bobby to get out to us for a vote. Bobby, do you want to go over the responses from the commissioner?
No, Anya, this is Mark Wynn. Go back to that last document, please. Go. Okay, thank you. Go down to 12. Now, Carol, please. So this is 12. This is the individual consumer we talked a lot about back in January. Mm-hmm. Is this all the words that you passed along to the DOI staff to submit to the commissioner? Is that what it looks like? All those words?
I believe so.
Okay,
this
good.
Is the document that goes to DOI.
Okay, good. Now, Bobby, go ahead and comment. And there's a reason why I asked that question.
I don't know what you guys want me to comment on. I forwarded the two documents. I had them broken out into the recommendations that were approved on October 7th and the one recommendation that was approved on January 6th. And then those responses were provided. So I'm not sure. I mean, these are more health related and they were responded to by our health experts and the commissioner. And so I'm not sure there's a lot I can go over. I can kind of talk about the business interruption one if you'd like, but I don't know if you guys have questions about the responses that you need me to take back to the commissioner.
Does anybody have any questions about the responses?
I do. Let's go to 12. So I'd like to know from Bobby and Matt, we made a recommendation from the individual consumer on January 6th. It was a lengthy discussion. And we put in words what the recommendation is. And Carol just confirmed the words that were used in that issue, recommendation, and rationale. I noticed in the response, it also included the recommendation, the issue, and rationale, and lots of sentences were deleted. Who did that, Bobby or Matt?
Honestly, Mark, I probably took these from the March 15th, 2021 document, and and as I explained earlier, I don't know that that was the most recent one. So, but I just copy and paste them. I don't delete anything. I don't remove anything. I just copy and paste.
I don't think
that may have been if Carol was taking notes on a different version that the council didn't have, I wouldn't have had that version to send to Bobby.
Well, we can talk about it later, but it was missing quite a bit of words. So no, I don't think we should reconsider it, but I don't want to take away. I took enough time from that last time, so we'll do it in July. But that recommendation was not as presented to the commission or approved. And so the response shouldn't be, I wanted some responses, the consumer wanted responses on all the rationales, on all the words, not just half the rationale and half the recommendation and half the issue.
Okay, well, I'm happy to, sorry, I'm getting a feedback. I'm happy to revise this recommendation with the current document that you guys are just now working on and send it back for review and response.
I think that makes a lot of sense. We just asked the commissioner to review the entirety of the words that just were mistakenly not provided to him so that he could provide a full response.
Yep. Yeah, and Mark, I'll take responsibility for that. I don't think that I was working off of the document that Carol had been note-taking on during that meeting or had updated, and that's what I sent to Bobby. So I didn't have the most up-to-date version that I should have had because I didn't have access to it.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Thank you, Bobby.
You know, it does bring up the issue that we somehow need to identify the document version that we're working on in some way.
Yeah, and I'm going to be working from the one that Bobby sent out this morning moving forward. There is a Google Doc, so it is a living document. People can access it. I think part of the problem was previous versions were not necessarily Google Docs, so there were multiple saved versions of things that weren't being updated in real time.
So can we put a version in the footer, a version number and a date?
You can, Anaya. It's just, it has to be manually changed every single time.
Yeah, we can, but I won't be working off of a Word document.
Right.
So
it'll be a Google Doc.
It tracks all edits in Google Docs that are dated with a timestamp.
Which is awesome.
So I'm a little bit unclear. Anaya, do you now have what Mark was just referring to?
If that's what's in, yeah.
Yes, because Mark asked him to show it up. Mark has his thumb up, has asked him to present it, and he did, and all those words are there. So, and for those of you who are not familiar with Google Docs, it's really fabulous because, to Anaya's point, it does automatically keep track of every single edit that gets made, by whom, when, and everything else. So on a going forward basis, these documents will be sent out, I'm assuming, as a Google Doc, not as a Word document, so, or a PDF.
Yes.
And to go back to Carol's request to add the commissioner's responses to that document, the format of it is not conducive for that. I mean, there's no column for the commissioner's responses. If you would like that, I think it needs to be, the format needs to be either tweaked or changed.
Yeah, and I'll fix the formatting, Bobby, so that we can have those included when we receive them. So I'll work on that before the next meeting and work on getting all of the responses that we've received thus far to recommendations included in that.
Okay, so just to be clear, the recommendation dated January 6th is going back to the commissioner. I will update the text from the document that you're currently working off of.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bobby.
And it's also referred to as R12, right, Anaya?
Yep.
Okay.
Are the October 7th recommendations or responses, I guess you guys need to talk about whether you're ready for those to be posted.
I believe Mark has expressed that they're incomplete, and so I believe
that was the,
go ahead.
sorry, Eileen, that was the January 6th recommendation response,
Sorry,
not the other document was the October 7th responses.
Gotcha.
Did anybody have any questions or concerns around those responses?
I'm working on pulling it back up again. So that's the one that talks about rate setting and business interruptions insurance, right? And health affordability, et cetera. Okay. So it would be helpful, Bobby, that these reply documents, or you guys will address it in the formatting, but it doesn't have the number of the recommendation. That make it easier to cross-reference. So the first response is on the health insurance rate setting, requesting real transparency, and then we have the commissioner's response. So is everybody looking at that from the documents that Bobby sent out? Great.
Yeah, and I think the reformatting of that document that we use for tracking will help with that correlation issue too.
Based on my experience with the rate setting process and the tools that are in use, I am not surprised by the commissioner's response. I was heartened earlier when Anaya said that there's a bill in the legislature to, make things easier for the public to do via the website. This is just a very arcane process, unfortunately, and it's an arcane process for rate setting, that is in use across the entire United States, It's sad.
But a recommendation I made in a prior council was Oregon uses the same software and it's much more user friendly. It simply takes somebody to go to the face. I'm not an IT person. It simply takes someone who knows how to do it to bring it down to the Expedia level.
I agree. To make the GUI better, the graphical user interface better. I agree.
Okay, I'm not an IT person, but Oregon, I suggested that DOI budget a trip to Oregon.
You like spending the state's money.
I'm dead serious.
I know you are.
If there are best practices, we should take advantage of them.
Right, but we can do that through a Google Meet as well, so they can show us what it looks like. But I'll go to Oregon on the
that was in the day of airplanes.
Exactly.
Does anybody actually alpha test and beta test this GUI software, or with the public or anything like that, or do they just come up with something and put it out there for people to access, and it is what it is?
No, this is, as I was trying to say, and it's the National Association of something. This is the standard way across the United States that insurance carriers file their rates and divisions of insurance review their rates. So they weren't initially designed to be viewed by the public, so I think the division did a good job with the onset of Obamacare and having to make all this making this information more available. They have a very nice tutorial, but it's still a very ugly system. So, and to Carol's point, other states have addressed that issue by making a more consumer-friendly GUI, but we don't have that. And so
no. Right now, just because I know I've tried to look from time to time out there and it'd say, okay, this increased by this percent of that. And then I'd say, well, for my age and the town I'm in, what is my rate really going to be between these different carriers? And it was kind of hard to figure that out.
Very bad. Yeah, it's very hard. Yep. It's not designed for that. It really isn't. So,
one thing about the commissioner's response in terms of that health insurance affordability issue that, I sort of, again, stumble on this a little bit. The Colorado reinsurance program has lowered rates on the individual market by 20%. That's a statement that needs to be modified. It has, for the moment, done that rate of lowering as an average, where some rates have not been lowered at all and have gone up.
Yeah, I found that out. There's a silver plan went down more than the bronze plan, so my premium actually went up.
Yeah, so this,
So, but
this is
Carol,
something
you got
that's
us off
huge.
topic. You got us off topic again. So we were looking at the very first one, which is the health insurance rate setting. So are we okay with the commissioner's response there? I suggest that yes for now, and that maybe if that, because the response basically is they're not going to do anything about it. I don't mean to be mean, but that's what they're saying. And then maybe we revisit it, you know, I don't know, when we have a chance to do that, or based on the new legislation that might be coming out, that would give them more money potentially, as well as incentive to make this process more user-friendly.
Well, and on the rate setting, I think they're missing half of the puzzle. Because the rates are not only high, but the out-of-pocket maxes are for me to benefit from my insurance, I got to fork out $30,000 before I can actually benefit from it, and that's rates and out-of-pocket max. So they're only addressing half of the puzzle here.
Yep.
And the out-of-pocket max is legislated by the federal government. So, I mean, it's something that potentially the state of Colorado could look at changing, but, you know, it's not that they just made it all up. So, all right. So Mark says that he's okay with the rate setting response for what we have right now.
Everybody else okay moving forward with that?
I'm a little bit puzzled, Eileen. What, we don't have to approve that.
No,
we
but
just
we're
have to
going through them
acknowledge-
one by one, Carol.
Right. We just have to acknowledge that we got the receipt and we're okay with it. That's all. We're not
And we
saying,
don't want to take any further action.
right. Exactly. That's all. We're not saying it's great, because it ain't great.
For now.
Correct. Exactly. It's okay. Thank you. Thank you for responding, Mr. Commissioner, and your fabulous staff, because your staff is fabulous. So, Mr. Chairperson, we have 4 minutes to go before the meeting is over. Okay.
We sure do. So moving on to the business interruption insurance, anybody have any concerns with that response that the council would need to take action on to move forward, to get any clarification or put forth a new recommendation to receive a better response if needed?
Oh, I was heartened by the response by the commissioner. That means that we're aware, we're monitoring, we're taking care of it. You know, not solving every single problem that shows up, but you know, they're aware, they're looking at it, they're making sure that we don't get ripped off too much.
Yep.
So NAIC, I think, is that organization I was trying to reach for on the previous recommendation, by the way. I could be wrong. Bobby will tell me.
The National Association of Insurance Commissioners.
There it is. That is exactly what it is. Thank you very much, Bob. Everybody else okay with that? Mr. Mark says yes. All right. Now
Mark's moving forward without us. He's already on health insurance affordability. So with the health insurance affordability, Carol, I hear your concern. I don't think that we can modify a response from the commissioner. That is his statement. And he can make whatever statements he wants. We can respond to the response as a council, or we could put forth a more defined recommendation if we want to get a different response if necessary. But I don't think we have the ability to modify his responses.
I wasn't suggesting that. I was just asking Eileen what we were doing in terms of what was our reason for reading these out loud. You know,
no, just reviewing them. I mean, these are our minutes, right? So as a council, we're saying, yes, we received these responses. Thank you very much. That's all.
Well, and reviewing them to make sure that there's no further action that the council would like to take. Correct. On any particular responses. If he sends us a response and it's not what we actually need, we can either put forth a new recommendation or respond to him saying, this is actually the information we wanted and the response that we wanted to get, and we're not seeing that in your response.
Which one are you on?
The health insurance affordability issue.
Which number is it in this email document? I'm trying to.
It's the fourth response box down.
No, he's trying to cross-reference it with Carol's document, I think.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, I'm looking at, I got too many documents up here on two different computers.
Exactly.
Here, would it help if I share it?
Yeah, share Carol's document again so we can see it.
Yeah, 'cause
We
I
want to
got-
share Carol's
I see one
document or
on
the response
transparency,
document?
and then I see the one on rates.
I have the response, so but I to Chuck's point, I don't know where that falls on the bigger document.
Do we need the bigger document right now, though?
Probably not. Sorry.
Okay.
1 minute
Chuck,
to
would it be
go.
helpful for you if I share the response document for the next 60 seconds? There's only one more response, the Medigap option.
All right.
In the Medigap, yeah.
Any issues on Medigap? And if not, can we get a motion to post these on the website? Or do we not need to do that and we can just have Bobby post them?
I hope we don't have to move to post them. I think that's the commissioner's responsibility.
Great.
I agree.
Well, then, I think we most all have a little homework to do before the next meeting. Thanks for all your work today, folks. I'm really excited that we finally have some operating principles. Bobby will get those posted on, well, Bobby will get the person who posts the things on the website to post those on the website. And yeah. Any other business? We're a minute over. If not, meeting adjourned. I'll see you all in July and see emails from you all before then.
Good to see everybody.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.